Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Staying Ahead of 1099 and W-9 Compliance in Changing Times. My name is Jasmine O'Cutesy, and I'll be your host today. If this is your first time, welcome, and if you've joined us before, welcome back. I'll review a few quick items before we get started. A friendly reminder that Avalara cannot provide tax or legal advice. The information we'll be discussing today is for informational purposes only. And on your screen is our safe harbor policy, so please take a moment to review. We are recording today's event, so if you want to listen again or share it with a colleague, you'll receive the recording within 24 hours. The console you're looking at can be customized, so feel free to move or resize the windows. The additional resources section contains the slide deck and other related links, and there are several ways to engage with the presenter and fellow attendees today. So first, please submit any questions you may have for the speaker in the Ask Questions box. Feel free to submit any troubleshooting questions there as well, and we'll be able to help you out. Second, you can join our attendee chat by clicking on the icon at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to introduce yourself, network, and discuss today's topic. We're also offering 1 CPE credit for today's presentation. For those looking to receive that credit, please note that you'll need to respond to at least 3 poll questions and be present for at least 50 minutes. Once you have met CPE requirements, your certificate will be available to download in the Earn Certification box on your screen. That'll also be emailed in the post-event email today. So let's go ahead and meet our presenter. We're pleased to be joined by 1099 Product Solution Consultant and Avalara expert, Gordon Walsh. So Gordon, thank you for being here today. The floor is all yours if you want to get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great to be here. Great to be chatting with all of you today, or rather in a webinar format, chatting to you today. But excited to be here. I am coming to you live from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where we've been living in the 40s and 50s, but I think the cold is coming. Again, looking forward to chat with you here today about all these different W-9 and 1099 compliance topics. Feel free to shoot us a note in the chat where you are joining us from. It's always fun just to see what parts of the country we are connected to and who's on the call. So again, feel free to head to your chat and send out a message with where you're calling in from. And also reminder that you can use the Q&A to ask questions throughout. I will keep my eyes on that. So let's move along here. Let's talk about what we're gonna do here today. We're gonna talk about the known and unknown workflow in the world of 1099. We'll talk about W-9s as a big part of that. Hint, it's part of the unknown or the forgotten workflow. We'll talk about how there's all of these changes happening from a federal, a state, and an individual recipient. Your vendors, your contractors, your sellers, whatever they might be. We're going to talk about the changes that are happening in the world of 1099 around the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. We'll give you a checklist with some dates and things to keep up with everything that's going on. And then we'll quickly jump into Avalara and a live demo and an account of what it looks like to be able to manage W-9s and 1099s in the system itself within Avalara. And then any questions that go unresolved throughout, we'll be able to speak to at that time. So there's our high level for the time we have together. Let's get into it. And I did see a lot of, we are all over Virginia, Texas, Florida, Indiana, Mississippi, California. All right, so California all the way out to New York and Florida. We are covering the entire east to west. We've got the north, the south. We are all over. I see some fellow people in Minneapolis. This is great. Love it. The Midwest, the Great Plains, the coasts, everywhere. This is awesome. Do we have any mountain states, Rocky Mountain states in there? Anybody calling in from those ones? I did see Montana, Iowa. It's great. Okay, let's jump in. I could do this all day. It's fun to see where people are. So let's talk about the forgotten workflow of 1099 compliance. And to do that, first we need to start with kind of our known workflow, as it were. So this is probably what you're getting geared up and ready to do for January, right? And what it looks like, what our process is. So step one, right? We always need to start with, does a vendor even meet the requirements to file a 1099 or a 1042S, right? And that's looking at their data and to say, do they qualify from a tax classification standpoint, right? Are they a sole proprietor or an LLC taxed as a sole proprietor, a partnership? Do they even get a 1099? And then based on that, we move through kind of the short list or those who do qualify. And then we're looking at what type of payments do we make and what thresholds did we hit? Did they meet the payment thresholds for the type of 1099 that you're filing, so that you can now kind of say, this is my list. This is who needs a 1099 and meets the requirements, so that we can create that form. Then what you should be doing is doing the research on each and every state, right? Every state has some level of requirement or doesn't, but you need to do the research to know which ones do have requirements and what they are, and which ones don't have requirements. And so we're researching each state based on the location of our business, of the businesses or the individuals who did the work on the 1099 that would be getting a 1099, to figure out which states do we need to file with. We've done all that. Now we can take all of our data from a W-9 or a W-8 and transfer that over to the 1099 or the 1042S if we're doing the international side, and also then kind of reach into our ERP or accounting software, get all the numbers, all that data, and fill in that actual 1099 or 1042S that needs to be filed. And then we finally get to go to the IRS and file these forms, and then potentially to then have to go to each and every state individually and submit those, get those 1099s filed to those states, right? And don't worry, you're not on camera. So if you're the one going, states, don't worry. I meet with tons of businesses every day, every week, and that comes up all the time. Again, yes, you absolutely do have state obligations, but you would not be the first or the last to not know about that necessarily. So, but it doesn't end when we get to the IRS. You'd like to think it does. It would be nice, wouldn't it? But it doesn't. Now we have to go and print every one of those forms, stuff it in an envelope, lick that, stamp it, and get it in the mail and postmarked off to our vendor, our contractor, or whatever they are to us, that recipient, typically by January 31st or March 15th, respectively, on the 1099 and 1042S. Obviously, we have some changes in this upcoming year in that February 2nd is our due date, with it the 31st being a weekend in this upcoming year. Right. And that's a ton of extra work right then and there. But it's a necessary part of the process. And you'd like to think you're done there. But again, anybody who's done 1099s before, we absolutely know that January is its own beast. But then it's the rest of the year, right? When I get those calls, hey, I lost my 1099. Can you send me another? Or we get those fateful B notices, the CP 2100 notice that lets you know you've got more work to do. Something didn't match with the IRS, and now we're dealing with these little things that pop up throughout the year, all the rest of the time. Whew! Feel better. Got all that out there. So this is what's coming up. This is what's coming up, and that's our known workflow. But at Avalara, we would tell you that it actually begins way sooner than that. That the first few steps of doing a 1099 are not actually looking at vendor requirements in December or January. It actually begins with W-9 collection. That is where we can really get our compliance in line. So if we think about it, really we have to go back to the moment we onboarded that vendor, that contractor, that seller, that ambassador, that that individual or company. And that was when we requested a W-9 or a W-8. And that is, again, IRS rules, regulations say you should be collecting a W-8 or W-9 to every non-employee you make payment to, regardless of who they are or what they are. If you have any type of compensation that goes to them in any way and they're not your employee, you should be collecting a W-9 or a W-8 from them in advance of making that initial or first payment, right? So you're going through and you're requesting all those, because that is, again, at the end of the day, the only spot that tells us whether they are 1099 eligible from that tax classification standpoint. That is the W-9. That's the only document that's going to do that. So need to get that from everybody. Once we get that, then we're reviewing it, right? This seems like something we kind of forget about, but if you're part of that team that collects W-9s, you are so used to getting these and going, I can't read that. That handwriting isn't legible, right? I don't know. Or they're missing entire boxes. They're missing a ton of information, or they filled out too many boxes and I can't read this, right? So we have to make sure that it's legible. And if it is, and all the information's there, then we should be going and tin matching, right? That is best practice. Creating an account, being able to go straight to the IRS and matching their name and their tax ID against the IRS database to make sure that it is a matched account, because that's how we prevent B notices, right? That's our powerful tool in the world of 1099 compliance, to make sure that you don't issue 1099s that are going to bite you, after you've done the filing, because it doesn't match. Matching up front is how you remove the liability of potentially owing taxes on this compensation. So we're collecting, we're making sure that everything is complete on that W-9 or W-8. We're tin matching those W-9s. And then if anything is off, we can't read it, it's missing information, it's overfilled out, or it gets a rejection from that tin match, we're going back to step one. We're starting over, we're collecting a new form. If it does all match, we're all good. Now we can go create that vendor record in our ERP and take that W-9 and store it in a central and secure location. I would strongly suggest, if your central and secure location is currently a stack on a desk or on a cabinet somewhere, you move that into a locked cabinet of some kind. But otherwise, we've got those centrally and securely stored. Now we can take over into the 1099 side of things. So hopefully these are all steps that you're doing at some level. Hopefully this is something that this all makes sense. And if you haven't been doing some of these steps, you'll after we talk today, you'll think about taking them on, and maybe you've got some more steps than this. We'd love to hear what those look like and what those are. But this is kind of that end-to-end side of things. Now, what I really want to look at is how that 1099 compliance really starts with W-9 collection, that it's not just the 1099s that matter coming up in January, it's really the W-9s as well, right? And to get some more insight on that, Jasmine, our first poll question.
Thank you, Gordon. So this poll question should pop up for everybody on their screen. It is on a separate pop-up, but the question we have for you today is approximately how many W-9s, W-8s, and W-4s do you have on file? We'll give you all a moment to answer. And as mentioned previously, I think that we have 4 poll questions today, and so we'll want you to answer at least 3 of those for that CPE credit today. Let us know if you have any issues in the Q&A section. We'll help you out. But you can always resize windows, make sure it pops up accordingly. But I'll move this over to the results. Gordon, if you want to speak to these.
Yeah. All right, we're all over the board. Looks like the majority of people are under 100, but we also have a lot in that up to 1,000. We're seeing some in that 1,000 plus and some in that 10,000 plus range. So we really do have a great amount or kind of variety of people joining us here today. That's great. And these rules, in terms of good practice and compliance, really really do transcend the size of the business. Doesn't matter if you only have a few or you have a lot. It's good practice is good practice. Obviously, as you grow in volume, some of these things, need to be done in scale, but really still all of this applies to any size of business, right? All right. So as we talk about W-9, the importance of W-9 to 1099, let's first start with the relationship between W-9s and 1099s. And what does that look like? Why is it that maybe there's a bit of a gap between W-9 and 1099 instead of them being this consolidated idea for most businesses, most people in this world? Well, one, it really has a lot to do with timing, doesn't it? W-9s are something that we do at the point of onboarding. When we meet a vendor or recipient for the very first time, we're collecting this at that moment. And that moment could be in January, but it could be any month of the year, any day of the year. We're onboarding new people here at the end of a year. But then 1099s are really only a January thing, right? They are seasonal to the start of each year. And so because of that timing separation, a lot of people have created kind of a separation in the tasks themselves, in that relationship, that they are a little bit more disconnected, right? Take that then and think about it functionally. W-9 collection, onboarding, procurement, seen as a procurement function, whereas 1099s have to do with reporting potential tax. And so tax comes back to usually AP and accounting, right? And so functionally, we see them as different things, procurement and accounting. And because of that, a lot of people not only see them as separate things, but have created even a different, business function or different department within the business that handles them. Talk to a lot of businesses where W-9 is something that, accounting doesn't touch at all. It has to do with a whole nother department. And so again, over time, this has created, further and further the gap between the two. Also keep in mind that, a lot of times vendor relationships, contract relationships, your non-employees can be very transactional, very one-off. You may only work with them one time, 2 times, 3 times, and that's it. And so it can be difficult to always want to have the motivation to build a formal and ongoing system, even though we work with new vendors all the time. Because we're not working with the same one all the time, it can create, some of that lack of motivation. And I think that these last two are really big. Legacy accounting systems weren't necessarily intended for onboarding. They were built to keep track of the payments, of the bookkeeping, but not vendor onboarding. So I always go back to this concept of, if you don't have the right tools, how do you do it right? And I think I work with my hands a lot outside of being a 1099 expert at Avalara. I woodwork. My shelving in my office here behind me was all hand built. And anybody who works with their hands in the world of woodworking or building anything knows the tools matter. The tools absolutely matter. That you can't expect to have great results if you don't have the right tools. So I think that this idea of the legacy systems in place have always been an interesting missing element to connecting these dots. And the last one, this one is really interesting to me. If we think about this world, the IRS absolutely tells us we must collect W-9s and have them on file for any business that we work with that's non-employees. And they need to be accurate, and that we need to file 1099s for those who qualify, and they give us the dates. But they don't mandate how. The how is missing. Got to collect W-9. How you do it? Meh. Got to file a 1099. How you do it? Meh. And because there isn't that guidance, it creates all kinds of potential issues or lack thereof of just not necessarily following along in the right or best practices, for compliance. So definitely an interesting thing. And it is wild when the IRS does give us a how, what that can do to us. If you remember, and we're going to talk about it on a slide coming up, but in 2023, we absolutely saw a new how. The IRS said if you have more than 10 information returns, so your 1099s and your W-2s combined, you now have to e-file. You can no longer paper file at the IRS. Whew. that caused havoc. If you've always been e-filing, it didn't affect you. But millions of filers had been filing on paper, and it caused all kinds of, what do I do now? How do I do this? How do I get a TCC code so I can file to the IRS and the fire system? What do we do now? And so how does matter, right? It does. Now, if we don't properly collect W-9s or take this into consideration, what does it look like? What can go wrong? Well, if we don't have a good process for W-9, then we potentially are following missing 1099s that we should be filing, because the W-9 is telling us this is a certain tax classification that requires it or doesn't. We may be filing 1099s we don't need to file, or we're missing 1099s that we need to file. But we're also potentially filing incorrect 1099s, ones that have the wrong information because the W-9 we were given wasn't correct in some way. And so again, now, if that ever happens, the IRS is going to come back to us. We become the middleman in dealing with the vendor and the IRS. We are in the middle. And so we have to fight those battles, right? If we don't have like a solid and centrally standardized, process and place to store these, well, now what happens if we get person one from a company sends us a W-9, and then we get a different W-9 from that same company, but it's got different data on it, or we accidentally double enter things into our system. Now we're accidentally doing duplication, or we're missing things, right? Or we're using, again, the wrong W-9 instead of the correct W-9. And so, again, we're now filing incorrectly. And going back to just having a W-9 for everybody. Remember, the only documentation that we have that says what your tax classification is and whether you need to have a 1099 issued is a W-9. So while we can definitely assume massive global organizations are C Corps, sometimes it can be very surprising that they're not, and when they're not. And so, again, it is just the right practice of saying, I'm going to get W-9 no matter what, each and every time. That way I know I'm filing the right things and I have that audit trail. And again, coming back to that audit trail, that is key. If you've ever been through an IRS audit, and I've never owned my own business to have been through it, but I have helped tons and tons of businesses while they're going through audits related to non-employees. You know that the number one most powerful tool in the world of an IRS audit is receipts, receipts, receipts. That paper trail, that auditability is huge. Being able to pull that paper out and say, this is what I got, this is when I got it, this is what it is, helps to clear up confusion and tell the story, right? And then, again, I left one of my favorite ones, or the most interesting ones in my head for last, that we often wait until December and January to recognize and to do the audit that looks at it and says, well, I'm missing a W-9, or I don't know the tax ID information because we just kind of paid based on invoices. We then scramble in that really busy time of the year, both personally and professionally, right? There's all kinds of holidays and the turning over of the calendar year and things happening in December and January, and it's a busy time. We're closing our books, we're opening the year, might be the end and start of our fiscal, all of those things. And so when we realize that, now we're scrambling and we're going and chasing after these vendors and saying, hey, I need a W-9. Hey, I need information. Hey, you gave me a W-9, but it doesn't TIN match. And right now, well, we're both busy. I need you to help me out. And that creates problems. That creates tension. And it also creates stress for you, because now you're trying to get this. And if you're not getting the responses, you're thinking, I'm going to have to file a 1099, missing a TIN, or I won't file, and now I'm facing late fines or corrections, or again, having to try to go through abating a B notice. So W-9 collection is a pretty intense thing, but it is what allows us to be in a place of compliance, right? And again, there are simple solutions. Get your systems to work together, automate this, and take this on all year long. This is not the thing that we do right before 1099 time in January. It's something that it should be happening every day. I liken this all the time to brushing your teeth. which I know you didn't see that coming, dental hygiene as a part of the 1099 webinar today, but I'm going there. If you didn't brush your teeth every day, well, the day before the dentist would be a pretty stressful one, right? And if you haven't brushed your teeth for months and you knew you had a dentist appointment tomorrow, the day before you're gonna be scrambling, trying to clean up your teeth, trying to fix this so that you're not stuck getting, you know, cavities and drills for hours in your mouth. But you're probably in a tough spot at that point. No, we would never do that. Instead, we have this simple, easy daily process year round. We brush our teeth. Hopefully floss, very controversial. Don't want to get into that. But if you're taking care of your teeth every day, then when you go to the dentist appointment, you're in and out 30, 45 minutes, no problem. That's the same thing here. If we collect W-9s and we do this year round and keep that compliance moving on a simple daily activity like W-9 collection, well, now we get to the 1099 time and it becomes much easier, right? And so things to consider in those automations: real-time W-9 collection, collect W-9s at the point of onboarding. Don't wait until you've made payment. Do it right away. TIN match at the point of onboarding. Again, automate that. I will show you that with Avalara, that we can help with W-9 collection. We TIN match live at the time of onboarding, but do that real-time collection, do that TIN matching, and that will make a big difference. And then use tools that allow you to connect your systems together. APIs, that data bridge between where this data comes in, Avalara in this case, to your ERPs, to your other systems, connecting the systems so that you can remove the human elements, the efforts, the time that it takes, okay? So it all starts with great W-9 compliance and collection. But 1099 compliance ends with several of our factors, right? The federal side of filing, the states and the filing required there, and our recipients, those individuals that we work with and we are obligated to comply and get them copies of their 1099s. Three elements, right, that matter, okay? But before we talk about that, our second poll.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, so our second question we have for the audience today is, how many hours does your company typically spend in January focused solely on 1099 compliance with the IRS? I'll go ahead and push this out for everybody so you can go ahead and choose an answer. We have A, 0 to 10 hours, B, 10 to 50, C, 50 to 100, or D, more than 100. So you should see that.
This is always an interesting one.
Yes. Give you all just another minute. You should see it pop up as a separate pop-up window on your screen. All right, and the floor is back over to you, Gordon.
Awesome. Okay, whew. So I'm seeing results again across all of them. Looks like the majority, over half of our the people attending today in that 10 to 50 hour, 10 to 50 hour range. The next largest grouping being in the 0 to 10 hours. So, you know, 80% of us, 82% of us in that. But we do have people in that 50 to 100 or more than 100 hours range as well. You know, I think honestly, as you look at this, it's always situational. So don't take this across the board. You know, got to take it with a grain of salt based on your situation and the complications that come with the industry you work in or the volumes you work with. But even our largest filers and companies, again, if you have tools in place and you have technology helping you and good process with tools that manage that good process, can drastically reduce pretty much everyone's time. Again, my role at Avalara, I speak with thousands of businesses every year, and I would definitely say that a vast majority of them, when we can improve either process or the tools that they're using, or both, we can see a reduction in the amount of time it takes to be compliant come 1099 time, regardless of which one of these buckets you fit in. So let's keep moving and talking. So we said there were three pieces of the puzzle that 1099 compliance ends with. The first is the federal, right? And these are a moving target. What's next, right? What do we have to think about today that the IRS is throwing at us? A bunch of examples, right? Were you doing 1099s in 2020? Do you remember that? If you want to put a horror story, or I totally remember that terrible year in the chat, feel free to tell us anything you're thinking of. But if you were a part of 1099 in 2020, you remember that was the year of the 1099 NEC. And so we went from being able to just say, we paid somebody, miscellaneous, miscellaneous, miscellaneous. And all of a sudden we had the NEC, and boy, was there some complications that year because of that. So that was a brand new or reinstated form that caused a little bit of headache. We talked about this earlier. In 23, we had the new rule stating that you had to e-file your forms if you had 10 or more information returns, and information returns alone, that created confusion for people because they didn't know if it meant 1099 or what. And it meant 1099, W-2, 1042S, your year-end annual filings. And that qualifies for a lot of people. And so they had to learn about FIRE and TCC codes, or finding a solution that would help them file electronically, right? I think coming into 2026, the IRS is still dealing with the ramifications of that move. There are still people who have filed, all of that via paper, even though they weren't supposed to, right? How about the new form making its debut this year? The 1099-DA, which stands for digital assets. This is just a lot like your W-2G for casinos and gambling winnings, or your 1099-B for brokerage trades. Every trade, profit, loss from digital assets, so crypto, Bitcoin, all of that, NFTs, that has to be reported on a 1099-DA. And that's first year for doing that is this year for all digital asset transactions in 24. So if that's the world you live in, well, there's going to be a lot of new reporting. And the crazy thing is that the IRS predicts that the number of 1099-DAs that could be reported this year is in the billions of 1099-DAs in year one. So that's a lot to keep up with. And then 1099K. This has been a constant saga for us over the last few years. If you deal with 1099Ks, if you're a third-party payment processor or marketplace or something, you have to file those Ks. The threshold is constantly moved around. It was 2 years ago that it was going to be reduced. And so we saw the 200 transaction limit fall off. We saw the 20,000 go down to 5,000. And then this year it was supposed to be 2,500. And the next year, $600. But if you've been paying attention, you know that that is not the case anymore. So I'm going to talk about the 1099K specifically here in a little bit. But it's just, there's always something to keep up with from an IRS perspective, from a federal perspective. And so knowing what's going on, keeping up with that, and how it applies to your business is going to be the tough part, right? How about the states? Which states do you have to file in? Which states don't you have to file in? We've got all kinds of different examples. We picked a few, right? North Carolina. If you withhold any North Carolina state income tax, well, now you've got extra forms that you've got to file in North Carolina. The deadlines in Delaware are going to be different potentially from the federal filing deadlines. How about New Jersey? Again, depending on whether you withhold or you don't withhold, changes the dates, right? Every state has its own rules and deadlines, and they change depending on which form it is and whether you had to withhold or you didn't. Or Pennsylvania. How about Pennsylvania? If you have withholding tax for your employees in Pennsylvania, well, then you have to submit your 1099s with a Pennsylvania state withholding ID. But if you don't have any employees that have taxes withheld in Pennsylvania, well, then you don't need a Pennsylvania state withholding ID to submit your 1099s. That causes a headache for people every year. So you have to look at it and say, do I even know which states I need to file in based on their rules and based on where I have work being done or where my 1099s, my recipients are, right? Where are these individuals and what are they, what are they doing? Then above and beyond that, we also have the combined federal state filing program, which we all, if you live in this industry, you would refer to as CFS. CFS is that program where when you file with the IRS, it files with the state for you automatically. It was meant to be very helpful to make it so that you didn't have to do as much for the states, and so the states didn't have to do as much. However, only some states participate. Only some states participate. So in those states, when you file through the IRS, you don't have to do anything with the state because it automatically files to those states for you. But you have to keep track of which states are a part of it. Every year we see potential new states joining this list. And then you also have the subcategories, states that participate in CFS, but also require you to file in the state above and beyond CFS, depending on the instance. Some doesn't matter. You still have to file with the state. Some, you have to file with the state if you meet certain requirements of withholding or form types or thresholds. And then you've got all the states that don't participate in CFS and then have their own rules, right? So keeping track of the states and what's going on is a challenge. And being able to go to the state and get this data easily from the Department of Revenue or Department of Treasury and know what to do is a whole nother battle, a whole nother story, right? So we have to keep track of the federal, we have to keep track of the states, and then we've got to keep track of what's going on with our recipients, all those contractors or vendors or individuals that we work with that are not our employees, right? Maybe they moved. Did they tell you? Isn't it always funny when how you find out, right? That's our next poll question here, or what it should be our next poll question for the next time we do one of these is how do you primarily find out that one of your non-employees moved? I'm going to guess the number one answer: return to sender mail. When we send that 1099 out and we get it back as return to sender because we didn't know, and so we have to help them keep up with that with us. Maybe they reincorporated, they changed their legal name, they have a new tax ID, and so maybe in a year we need to know that. Maybe it means the 1099 needs to be changed. Maybe it means we need to issue 2 1099s because they have 2 entities that year as they incorporated, right? Maybe we can't even read what they've written because they have bad handwriting. I think it's ironic we chose to say I have bad handwriting for a freelance writer. Probably makes sense though. Or maybe they didn't even they didn't know they needed to give us a W-9, or they didn't understand what we were asking for. Or maybe we've got some internationals and they don't know their FTIN or their GIIN or don't understand treaty rates for their country. So there's a lot of these moving pieces, and having to keep up with that and making sure that we are getting these things to vendors, that we're keeping them in the loop as well, because they're the ones who are going to be responsible for paying the taxes. So do we know who requires a 1099? And do we also know what we can be doing to make our lives easier? Have we gained consent to e-deliver? You are allowed to email or make your 1099s available to your vendors electronically. You don't have to mail them, but in order to do so, you have to gain consent from the recipient via IRS-approved methods. Do you know who's consented? Have you gained consent? Have you tried to make that an easier 1099 or delivery process for yourself, right? And so, unfortunately, ignorance of these rules is a problem because the IRS has something they love to throw onto the top of these audits, and that's intentional disregard. They call it intentional disregard, where they say you knew better, but you made the mistake anyways, and so they increase the fines drastically in these situations. The funny thing is, there's no prize, there's no award for doing this right. If you do everything perfectly well, they're not going to send you a medal or a ribbon or give you a high five or write you a check. No, they're just going to call you out for every time you do it wrong. So again, what is the answer? Well, tools. Trust in tools that can help you keep track of your compliance, right? And this comes down to trusting, the outsourced concept of this to companies who do this all together, right? This is all we do at Avalara on our 1099 and W-9 product. We keep track of all the federal rules and we program that into our system. We keep track of every state and every rule for every state and program that automatically into our system, and have tools to help gain the consent for electronic delivery, help give them the option to opt in, opt out, and then redeliver or in a multitude of ways, right? Helping you achieve that compliance in an automated sense and fashion, right? So really taking care of this. We start with W-9, we end with this compliance, and really that's everything, right? No. We do have that big elephant in the room, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So let's talk about how that's affected things. I'm going to give you 3 quick topics that matter in this world. The first is that this is officially the last year for the FIRE system. That is the name of the system that forms are electronically filed with the IRS. It's called FIRE. Well, FIRE is retiring at the end of this upcoming filing season. And we will be transitioning to the new system in its entirety called IRIS, starting for the tax year 26, which is reported in January of 27. So we will see that switch, and I'll talk about that more here in a second. We will be seeing not only the 1099-DA, but we see a new 1098 form, the 1098 VLI for vehicle loan interest, which unless you are a loan issuer or servicer of a company, there with loans, this won't affect you from a business standpoint, but it could affect you if you own a car that you paid on a loan. And then the big one, there are some thresholds changing for the 1099K, miscellaneous, and the NEC. And so those are some of the most widely used forms. Obviously, we will probably see this coming up, right? So first, let's talk about the transition from FIRE. Well, for a lot of people, it won't matter. If you directly file with FIRE, it will matter to you because you won't be able to file with FIRE after this year. You will need to get a new set of codes. Your TCC codes for FIRE won't work with IRIS, and you'll need to move over. It is also using XML-based architecture. You can still use APIs, but mostly XML architecture. And it requires a lot more kind of annual upkeep than before. What is really interesting is not so much that, for you, those of you who use a third party like an Avalara to file, you have nothing to worry about because, well, we take care of all of it for you. But there is some interesting thoughts around this in that little things may have massive ramifications and ripple effects. Like FIRE has always been that you submit 1099 data, the name of the recipient is a 1-box field. With IRIS, this becomes a 2-box field. So you have a first name and a last name for those individuals, those sole proprietors. Well, it doesn't seem like it'd be that big of a deal, but think about where your data comes from, your ERP, your accounting software, your some other software. Does that separate first and last name, or is it just a 1-box field? That may affect how you get data into another system. Does the W-9 currently separate? Nope. It doesn't. So again, it's not hard if it says, John Smith. Well, that's probably pretty easy to figure out which name goes in which, but the IRS is notorious for saying, hey, business, you aren't supposed to decide anything for a recipient, a vendor, a contractor. So if it's not on us to decide, well, and it's in 1 box, how do we know which name, especially in multi-part names or more complex, longer names, what goes where? Could create some issues. So does that mean a new form of a W-9? Which there is a draft for a potential new W-9 coming out. Does that mean changes to the format of the 1099? So we have new 1099s coming out. There is a ton of potential ramification from something like this. So again, something just to keep your eye on. If you have filed with FIRE directly in the past, you'll need to learn about the new one. But otherwise, hopefully, your third party will help take care of everything. Again, this one probably not as big of a deal unless you are a servicer of loans, but there is a new 1098 vehicle loan interest. So this is, think of this just like your 1098 you get for a mortgage, right? All the interest accrued on a loan for a vehicle will need to be reported for anyone with $600 or more in interest. And so it may not affect you as a business, but it will potentially mean that if you have purchased a car using a loan, that you may be receiving a 1098 VLI in the future, and that will impact you just doing your taxes. This was supposed to make its debut for tax year 25, but recently this was pushed back to tax year 26. So the introduction is there. The draft of the form is out, but we shouldn't see anything mattering until January 1st with those loans. And then the last one, the big one, we see the threshold change for 3 different forms. The 1099K, again, I had said before, it was meant to be the transaction limit of 200 transactions and the $20,000 threshold. We're dropping each year up until next year where it was going to finalize at 600. That has been repealed immediately. So if you have anything to do with 1099Ks, this year, tax year 25, reported in January of 26, the thresholds are back to the original $20,000 and 200 transactions. That is effective immediately. Now, the NEC and the miscellaneous, probably more common on this call, those have always been $600 is our threshold. Well, those are changing. Starting for tax year 2026, so any payment made as of January 1st of 26 that will be reported in 2027, the threshold for NECs and miscellaneous is now $2,000, going up to $2,000, okay? Which is probably good news for a lot of people in this call. It means you have fewer of these to file, right? But it is something to keep track of and think, is there anything I need to contemplate about this change and knowing about that? The other thing to consider is that it is not just $2,000 left like that. They remembered this time, like they forgot to decades ago with the $600, to add in a change or adjustment for inflation. So next year it will be $2,000, but then every year starting in 2027 and moving forward, it has the potential to be adjusted for inflation, a lot like we see with Social Security and the cap on that going up based on inflation. So you'll need to keep track of that $2,000 limit and what is it in that upcoming year, right? So a lot of potential changes, a lot of things that are happening, okay? And that leads us to our last poll question.
Yes, thank you. All right, and speaking of this topic, we'd love to ask, have you begun planning for the transition from the FIRE system to the IRA system, which is mandatory by 2027? Very curious about this. So is it A, yes, you've already transitioned, B, planning for 2026, C, you're aware but no plan yet, or D, unaware? Oh, that might help. I just pushed it out to the audience. So go ahead and put in your answer here. You should see it pop up on your screen right now. We'll give you all a minute to select an answer. All right, and on to the results. Here we are.
All
Back
right.
over to you, Gordon.
Thank you. It looks like we're kind of split across. We've got some people who have already transitioned, but it seems like the bulk of people are kind of in the process or haven't really thought through or don't know yet about their transition. Again, shouldn't be a big deal for you if you use a company like Avalara to help you with your 1099s for the filing. It really is going to be a bigger transition for you if you've been accustomed to filing directly with FIRE and having to make that transition. So kind of bear that in mind. All right, let's sum all of this up. How do we talk about this from a compliance standpoint? Well, it's really about utilizing the right tools. That if you don't have automation, if you don't have the right tools, that you're left having to keep track of a lot of moving pieces. You're having to operate on faith and trust of good data and hope that there aren't penalties in front of you. And we said that the reality of this the 1099 compliance is there's a lot of complexity to it. There's a lot of these moving pieces. So what we talk about is how can you partner with a company like Avalara? Well, we do all of it for you from the moment of W-9 collection, helping you live collect W-9s, real-time auto validation of tax ID numbers, collection of that, the e-delivery consent, and centrally locating, storing all this, keeping track of all those protocols, and then being able to create the 1099s, file them with the IRS, TIN matching, address verification, delivery via mail or email, and doing all of this in just a few clicks, right? So really trying to make this process easier and better across the board, so that you don't have to, make it easy. I'm sorry, make it challenging. We make it easy. We've made it even easier this year because we've introduced APIs, open APIs that allow you to integrate Avalara and the W-9 collection and 1099 filing software into a single kind of programmatic system with your ERP and everything else. Meaning, if you wanted, you could collect W-9s, validate tax ID numbers, create vendor records in your ERP, approve that the TIN has been matched for payment, make payments, file your 1099s with the IRS, and get your status updates from delivery and IRS and state acceptance and rejection. You could do all of that without ever having to log into Avalara, because all of the APIs allow you to push this data back and forth with your systems of choice. So really creates a streamlined concept here and making life a lot easier for you. And above and beyond that, if you're not able to do customization, well, we've built out connectors, pre-built connectors that are just drag and drop, ready to go, so that if you use a system like Bill or QuickBooks Online, NetSuite, Xero, and soon to be a few others like Microsoft products, you will be able to just pull the data straight from your system into Avalara with no imports, no exports, no CSV files, just straight connection, making life a lot cleaner and easier for you. So really, again, very, very easy. Okay, here's that checklist. So if you have a screenshot, screen grabber, this is the time to potentially grab that screen. I'm sure that we can make this available to you, or will be planning to make this available to you. But this is a good time to check out those dates. Bear in mind, all over that there are asterisks that kind of illustrate these are steps you can skip, or that Avalara will do for you using our system if you are a client in our system. So I'm going to move on and very, very quickly, because I know we're coming up time and there are some questions to answer. I'm going to quickly share my screen elsewhere here to show you what our solution looks like in a very fast and easy fashion. You should see this populate down in the media player. So if it's not showing up on your main screen, look down on the right side for your media player. You should see it there on screen. You can enlarge your media player there. Click the button to pop it out, or drag and drop to make that bigger so you can see my screen. But this is our system, and as I said, very easy to be able to come in with multiple companies or entities and simply be able to request any number of W-9s, W-8s, W-4s with nothing more than a vendor name and email address to send off an automated email that links that vendor directly to a pre-built W-9 or W-8 form. This eliminates handwritten W-9s. This eliminates partially filled out, overfilled out, underfilled out forms. It means you have a much better standard for collecting this data. We do gather live signature. We will gather that IRS required consent to e-deliver. And when they click sign and continue, it will live TIN match with the IRS, direct to IRS, and give them a live feedback that if it doesn't match the IRS database, we ask them to fix their form. We give them several opportunities then to come back in and revise this form. So by the time the W-9 comes to you, you know already, did it TIN match or not? Do we have consent to e-deliver? And do we even need to issue a 1099 based on this tax classification? And if we do have something as simple as a rejection, we can just click to re-request that so that we can get this all updated and have all of those PDFs ready to go. So again, now your W-9 starting point is much cleaner than it's ever been before. And what makes it even better is because we also do the 1099s, we can just simply transfer this this data straight from the W-9 engine into our 1099 engine. So then all the 1099s are already created. All you need to do is push to us how much you paid them. Again, once I'm ready to do my 1099s, we'll give you multiple options from CSV uploads to transferring your data if you used us last year to, as I said, multiple instances of softwares that we can do direct pulls from or use our custom APIs to push that data to us. We'll then give you an audit, a chance to make sure that all of these forms are exactly as you want them when you go to file them. We allow you to pick dates so that you can choose when these things file, or when the forms file, when we deliver emails, whether we do print mail or not for you. We'll do TIN matches and address verifications, and we'll give you a chance to correct anything that goes wrong. We also make mailing easy, that we will track all of the e-delivery, and if we don't gain consent, we'll let you know who's left so that you can physically mail out the rest. And then we will also help you to go back in prior years, make corrections, new submittals. We'll track all of your mail, your e-delivery, your IRS and state filings for you. And we will even do your corrections for free. So a very, very easy end-to-end solution that puts all of the data right in front of you so that you don't have to worry. You don't have to think about all of these things. It's all automated for you. So our final takeaway kind of here for the day, you know, there's a lot of moving pieces, but with the right tools and the right process, you can connect W-9 to 1099 and really make January a much easier month than it's ever been before. With that, we'll pass it back over to you, Jasmine, with our last poll question.
Thank you. We just wanted to ask the audience, like, if you'd like for Avalara to follow up with you, please select yes. We have a little bit of room for some Q&A, but if we're not able to get to your question today, we'll absolutely be sure to follow up with you afterwards. But you have an opportunity here to select that yes button, and we will be reaching out that way as well. But yeah, I don't know, Gordon, you've been doing such a great job on this presentation. If you've seen some of those great questions that come in, I can get you started with an initial question if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, just skimming through some of these questions right now, just to make sure we do cover some of these.
I see Daniel.
I did just see what is the cost. That's a great question. Our cost structure is built around the total number of W-9s or 1099s or other forms. We do over 40 year-end forms for filing. It really comes down to the total number of forms. I can tell you that we have clients that do 1, 2, 3 1099s with us. We have clients that do millions, and so. You know, the cost is variable but it is very, very cost effective and easy to do, no matter what. And we do file. I think I saw questions around, you know, do you do ints and divs and all that? We can absolutely file all forms of 1099, 1098s, 5498s, 3921s, 3922s, 1042s, T4As, all kinds of things. I also am seeing questions on 1099K. Yep, the threshold is this year $20,000 in 200 transactions. And yes, if you're PayPal's, Venmo's, they're the ones as the third parties, they are responsible for those Ks. So anything you paid via credit card and things like that, those Ks should be coming from them. Let's see what else. You can absolutely file the 1099 NECs and INTs if you use a different app somewhere else as well. Question around if you're not using FIRE or the IRS system to TIN match, you're using a tool like ours. We TIN match in our tool. We TIN match automatically. We can bulk TIN match. All kinds of options for that. I know we're right at time. Yes, the $600 limit for NEC and miscellaneous is still in place this year. We will see that $2,000 limit start in 2026.
Perfect. All right, well, I'll go ahead and wrap us up for the day. Thank you all for your time. I just wanted to say a friendly reminder that if you did qualify for CPE credit, you can now download your certificate in the CPE section of the console. Your certificate will also be available in that post-event email that you'll receive within the next 24 hours. That email will also include the recording from today. You can access the slides, additional resources. But we also have a few other webinars coming up. So if you want to check out our website, avalara.com/webinars, you can register today. But as always, if you can fill out that post-event survey, we love the feedback. And as mentioned, if we didn't get to your questions today, feel free to still input them and we'll be sure to follow up. But thank you, Gordon, for your time today. And thank you to all
Absolutely.
of our attendees. Hope you all have a great day.
Bye now.